She froze at the dining table, staring at the folder Sterling slid across her. Every choice she'd made last week exposed. Claudia had stormed out. Delphine followed. And now it was just her facing the truth of what the billionaire had been watching all along. Sterling's eyes didn't move. His question hung in the air like a storm. Why did you choose this path? And she didn't know if she should speak or disappear. But to understand why she sat there trembling, we have to go back to the beginning, when 3 women were given unlimited spending, and 1 billionaire was testing more than money. 3 black credit cards. Unlimited wealth. 3 women. 1 test that would break hearts and expose truth. Sterling Hawthorne stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, staring at the city lights below. 42 years old. Net worth that could buy small countries. And completely, devastatingly alone. Not alone in the way most people understand loneliness. His calendar stayed packed with galas, business dinners, charity auctions. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from investors, politicians, celebrities who claimed him as their closest friend. But Sterling knew something they didn't. None of them saw him. They saw his bank account with legs. The realization hit him 3 weeks ago at his birthday celebration. 200 guests. A cake that cost more than most people's cars. Champagne flowing like water. And as he stood there watching everyone laugh and dance and drink his expensive liquor, one thought screamed through his mind. If I lost everything tomorrow, how many of these people would still show up? He knew the answer. He'd always known it. His father warned him before he died. Son, wealth is a mirror that shows you who people really are. But it's a cruel mirror because it only shows you their greed, never their love. Sterling hadn't understood back then. Now, after 2 divorces, countless fair-weather friends, and business partners who smiled while stabbing him in the back, he understood perfectly. The worst part? He couldn't tell anymore. Couldn't distinguish between genuine affection and calculated performance. Every compliment felt rehearsed. Every laugh seemed timed for maximum effect. Every touch carried the weight of expectation. Was the woman kissing him goodnight thinking about him? Or about the yacht he just bought? Did his assistant really admire his work ethic, or just the bonus checks? When people asked how he was doing, did they actually care, or were they just maintaining access? The questions ate at him, rotted him from the inside out. 3 days ago, something inside Sterling snapped. He was tired of guessing, tired of wondering, tired of lying awake at night questioning every relationship in his life. He wanted answers, real ones, the kind that cut through pretense and exposed raw truth. So he devised a test, simple in concept, devastating in execution. 3 women in his life, 3 very different relationships, 3 black credit cards with no spending limit. His girlfriend Claudia, who told him every night that money didn't matter, that she'd love him even if he was poor. His executive assistant Delphine, who worked by his side for 6 years, who claimed loyalty meant more to her than any paycheck. And Amara, his housekeeper, the quiet woman who cleaned his home, who never asked for anything beyond her modest salary. One of them had to be real. One of them had to see past the wealth to the exhausted, lonely man underneath. Sterling pressed his forehead against the cold glass. His reflection stared back at him, and he barely recognized the desperate hope in his own eyes. Tomorrow, he would hand each woman a card, tell them to spend freely for 7 days. Buy whatever their hearts desired. He wouldn't watch, wouldn't monitor, wouldn't judge until the week ended. Then he'd look at the statements, and the numbers would tell him everything words never could. Would they be modest, thoughtful, reckless, greedy? What his maid would eventually buy would shatter him in ways he never saw coming. But tonight, Sterling Hawthorne still had hope. Tomorrow, the test would begin. The mahogany table gleamed under soft morning light. Sterling had arranged everything precisely. 3 envelopes, 3 chairs, 3 women who would arrive separately, each unaware of the others. He started with Claudia. She swept into his office wearing last season's designer dress. The one she'd mentioned 3 times was totally fine, even though newer collections had dropped. Her smile was radiant. Her kiss landed perfectly on his cheek. "Baby, what's this about? You sounded so mysterious on the phone." Sterling slid the first envelope across the polished wood. Black card inside. Her name embossed in silver. "I want to do something for you. No occasion. No strings. Just take this card and spend the next 7 days buying whatever makes you happy." Claudia's eyes widened. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the envelope. "Sterling, I don't need." "I know you don't need it. I want you to have it. Please." She bit her lip, and something flickered across her face. Something he couldn't quite read. Then she smiled again, softer this time, and touched his hand. "You're too good to me." After she left, Sterling sat in silence for 20 minutes before calling Delphine. His assistant arrived with her tablet, already reviewing his afternoon schedule. All business. Always efficient. She'd organized his entire empire, knew his secrets, covered his mistakes, and never once asked for recognition beyond her salary. "Delphine, sit." She glanced at the chair, confused. In 6 years, she'd never sat at this table. This was where Sterling made billion-dollar decisions, not where he chatted with employees. He pushed the second envelope forward. "What's this?" Her voice carried suspicion, not excitement. Thank you. 7 days. Unlimited spending. Buy whatever you want." Delphine stared at the envelope like it might explode. "Sir, I can't accept this." "You can. You will. You've earned it." Her jaw tightened. She picked up the envelope slowly, turned it over in her hands. "This feels like a test." Sterling's heart skipped. It's a gift. Gifts don't usually come with conditions hidden in fine print. There are no conditions. Spend it. Enjoy it. That's all. She studied his face for a long moment, then nodded once and left without another word. Finally, Amara. She arrived at his office door, hesitant, clutching a dust cloth like a shield. In 3 years of cleaning his home, she'd maybe spoken 50 words total to him. Always kept her head down. Always worked quietly. Always disappeared before he could even say thank you. "Mr. Hawthorne, you asked for me." Her accent carried the rhythm of somewhere far from here. Her uniform was clean, but faded from too many washes. Sterling gestured to the chair. She sat on its edge, looking ready to bolt. He slid the third envelope across the table. "Amara, I want you to have this. It's a credit card. For you. Spend the next week buying anything you need or want." She stared at the envelope like he'd placed a snake in front of her. "I don't understand." "It's simple. Take the card. Buy things. Whatever you like." Her hands stayed folded in her lap. "Sir, I have everything I need." "Then buy things you want." "I don't want anything." Sterling leaned forward. "Amara, please. Just take it. Consider it a bonus." She reached out slowly, her fingers barely touching the envelope before pulling it toward her. "Thank you, sir." Her eyes were wet. That detail would haunt him later. But right now, Sterling just felt relief. The test had begun. 7 days. 3 cards. 3 women. Soon, he'd know the truth. Claudia waited exactly 47 minutes after leaving Sterling's office before swiping the card for the first time. The boutique on 5th Avenue smelled like leather and ambition. She'd walked past this store 100 times, pressing her face against the glass like a kid at a candy shop, telling herself she didn't need those things, telling Sterling she was different from other women, that material things didn't define her. The sales associate's eyes lit up when Claudia placed the black card on the counter. The Valentino dress, the Louboutins, that Hermes bag in the window, and the diamond tennis bracelet in the case. $43,000. First purchase. She posted a photo an hour later, her wrist sparkling. Caption: "When he really sees your worth." 300 likes in 20 minutes. Day 2, she upgraded her car. The dealership didn't even blink when she pointed at the Mercedes convertible in the showroom. White leather interior, custom rims. $78,000 before she'd even sat in the driver's seat. Another post. Another caption about being treated like a queen. By day 3, Claudia had discovered something intoxicating. The card didn't just buy things. It bought access. Restaurants that usually required 3-month reservations suddenly had tables available. Exclusive clubs opened velvet ropes. Hotel suites materialized out of thin air. She invited friends she hadn't spoken to in years. Suddenly, everyone wanted to grab drinks, go shopping, take trips to the Hamptons. Suddenly, she was the center of attention, the generous one, the woman who could make things happen. The spa day cost $9,000. The private yacht rental for her and 6 friends cost $32,000. The champagne flowed. The caviar glistened. The photographers from Society Pages showed up because Claudia made sure they knew where to find her. "This is what I deserve," she told her reflection in the mirror of a penthouse suite she'd rented for the weekend. $2,000 a night. She didn't even plan to sleep there. Just wanted the Instagram backdrop. Sterling called once during the week. Asked how she was doing. If she needed anything. "Baby, I'm perfect. You're so generous. I love you so much." She hung up and immediately ordered custom jewelry. Her initials in diamonds. Because why not? By day 5, Claudia had spent more than most families earn in 3 years. But she wasn't thinking about families or earnings or consequences. She was thinking about how good it felt to finally be the woman everyone envied instead of the woman doing the envying. The card made her visible, made her matter, made her feel like she'd finally arrived at the life she was supposed to be living. She texted Sterling that night, "Thank you for seeing me, for knowing what I'm worth." What she meant was, thank you for the card, for the access, for the ability to prove to everyone watching that she'd made it. She didn't realize Sterling was reading between every word. And she definitely didn't realize that across town, someone else was using their card in ways that would make Claudia's spending look like exactly what it was. Hollow, empty, desperate. But that revelation was still days away. Delphine approached the card like she approached everything in her life. Strategically. She didn't rush to stores or post photos. She sat in her apartment the first night, staring at the black card on her kitchen table, running calculations in her head. This wasn't a gift. Sterling didn't do gifts. Everything he did served a purpose. So what was the purpose here? Test? Probably. Reward? Maybe. Opportunity? Definitely. Day 1, she booked a suite at the Plaza. Not because she needed a hotel room. Her apartment was 15 minutes away, but because being seen at the Plaza meant something. It signaled status, success, arrival. She scheduled meetings in the lobby, let colleagues and competitors see her gliding through marble hallways like she belonged there, like this was her natural habitat. The suite cost $4,000 a night. She stayed for 3 nights, ordered room service she barely touched, took calls from the balcony overlooking Central Park, making sure her voice carried just enough for people to overhear. Day 3, she attended an exclusive networking event. $5,000 ticket. The kind of party where deals worth millions got made over cocktails and carefully casual conversation. Delphine worked the room like a professional, collected business cards, dropped Sterling's name strategically, let people assume she had access to his money, his connections, his empire. Because she did, at least for 7 days. She bought a wardrobe that screamed executive power. Sharp blazers, Italian shoes, a watch that cost more than her first car. Nothing flashy, everything deliberate. The kind of clothes that made people lean in when you spoke because they assumed you had something important to say. The spa treatments came next. Not for relaxation, for appearance. Facials that erased stress lines. Manicures that projected control. Hair treatments that added shine and height. She was constructing an image Brick by expensive brick. Delphine understood something Claudia didn't. Wealth wasn't about having things. It was about becoming the kind of person who didn't need to prove they had things. She invested in experiences that expanded her network. VIP access to gallery openings where she met art collectors and hedge fund managers. Private tastings at restaurants where she sat next to tech founders and real estate moguls. Every dollar she spent was a deposit into her future. Every interaction was a potential door opening. By day 6, Delphine had spent $90,000. Substantial, but nothing reckless. Nothing that screamed nouveau riche desperation. She was playing chess while Claudia played checkers. Sterling called her once. Asked how the week was going. Productive. The time off has been valuable for strategic thinking. She didn't say, thank you. Didn't gush. Kept her voice level and professional because Delphine knew that gratitude sometimes looked like weakness. She hung up and immediately scheduled another networking lunch. 300 per person. 8 people attending. All of them positioned above her current station. This wasn't about enjoying wealth. This was about leveraging it. About transforming temporary access into permanent elevation. Delphine went to sleep each night with spreadsheets in her mind, calculating returns on investment, measuring the value of connections made, assessing whether this week would change her trajectory. She believed it would. What she didn't know was that in a small apartment across the city, someone was using their card to change trajectories too, just not their own. Amara held the black card in her hand for 2 hours before she used it the first time. She tried to return it, knocked on Sterling's door the next morning with the envelope still sealed. But he wasn't home. So she tucked it in her pocket and went about her day, cleaning bathrooms and dusting shelves and pretending the card didn't exist. But it did exist. And late that night, alone in her tiny studio apartment, Amara thought about her sister back home, Catalina, 3 years younger. Fighting an infection the free clinic couldn't treat properly. Needing medicine that cost more than their mother earned in 6 months. Amara picked up her phone, stared at the card, felt shame burn through her chest. This wasn't her money. This was charity, pity, the kind of handout that made her feel small and powerless and desperate. But Catalina needed help, and pride didn't cure infections. She transferred money for the medicine, $350. Then she sat on her bathroom floor and cried until her throat hurt. Day 2, she walked past the church near her apartment, the one that ran the soup kitchen. She'd volunteered there before, knew they were always struggling, always short on supplies. She went inside, found Father Miguel in his cramped office, sorting through bills with tired eyes. Father, I want to donate. For the kitchen. He looked up, surprised. Amara, that's kind, but you don't have to. Please, let me help. She gave $400. Enough for weeks of meals. Father Miguel's hands shook when he took the check. Day 3, the hospital. Amara had heard about a young mother trapped by a medical bill, unable to take her newborn home until she paid what she owed. She approached the billing department, asked if she could help. The clerk looked confused. You want to pay someone else's bill? Yes. Just this one. The woman with the baby. $600. One family freed. One mother crying with relief. Amara didn't ask for her name. Didn't want recognition. Just handed over the card and walked away before anyone could ask questions. Day 4. She found the shelter where families with nothing slept on cots and ate donated food. She bought groceries, fresh fruit, real meat, diapers and formula, warm blankets, things that turned survival into something resembling dignity. $500. Not enough to change everything, but enough to matter. The shelter director hugged her, and Amara felt her heart crack open. Day 5. She remembered the old woman in her building, Mrs. Chun, 83 years old, lived alone, couldn't afford her medication this month because the prices went up again. Amara found her in the laundry room, washing clothes by hand because the machines cost quarters she didn't have. She paid for 3 months of Mrs. Chen's prescriptions. $420. The old woman held Amara's face in her wrinkled hands and blessed her in Mandarin. Day 6, the school in her old neighborhood. Crumbling building. No art supplies. Teachers buying crayons with their own paychecks. Amara couldn't fix everything, but she could buy enough supplies for 1 classroom. Paint, paper, markers, books. $480 that would give 30 kids something to look forward to. Day 7. She walked through her neighborhood and saw all the small emergencies that people with money never noticed. The single father whose car broke down and couldn't get to work. The teenager whose shoes had holes and winter was coming. The family whose heat got shut off. She helped where she could. A car repair. New shoes. A utility bill. $250 split between people who needed someone to see them. By the final day, Amara had spent $2,980. She'd kept nothing for herself. Bought no new clothes. No jewelry. No luxury items. Just kindness. Over and over. Until the weight of other people's relief felt heavier than any diamond. She returned the card to Sterling's office on the 8th day. Left it in an envelope on his desk with a note. Thank you for trusting me. I tried to honor that trust. She didn't know he'd been watching. Didn't know the reports. Didn't know that while Claudia posted photos and Delphine networked and Amara gave everything away, Sterling's understanding of human nature was being completely dismantled. Some people, it turned out, really did see past the money. And that realization was about to break him in the most unexpected way. Marcus Kane had worked security for Sterling Hawthorne for 8 years. He'd seen everything. Affairs, betrayals, corporate espionage, family feuds over inheritance. Nothing surprised him anymore. Until this week. Sterling called him into the study on day 3. I need reports. All 3 cards. Every transaction. Marcus nodded. This wasn't unusual. Sterling often monitored expenses, protected himself from fraud and theft. But something in his boss's voice sounded different. Fragile. Almost afraid. The first report was easy. Claudia's spending read like a magazine spread. Luxury brands. Designer boutiques. 5-star everything. Marcus delivered the numbers without comment. Sterling's jaw tightened. He nodded. Said nothing. Delphine's report came next. More sophisticated. Strategic. But still self-serving. Hotels. Events. Networking. Building her own empire with someone else's money. Sterling stared at the figures for a long time. Then waved Marcus away. But the third report, Amara's. Marcus read through the transactions twice before bringing them to Sterling. Because they didn't make sense. Hospital payments, shelter donations, grocery stores in poor neighborhoods, medicine for strangers. He knocked on Sterling's door late at night. Found him sitting in darkness, staring at nothing. Sir, there's something you need to see. Marcus handed over Amara's statement. Watched Sterling's face as he read. Watched the confusion turn to disbelief, turn to something that looked like pain. This can't be right. Run it again. I did. 3 times. It's accurate. Sterling's hand trembled against the paper. She didn't buy anything for herself. Not one personal item. Everything went to charity. Medical bills. Families in need. Less than $3,000 total. Why? Marcus had no answer for that. Sterling stood. Walked to the window. Pressed his forehead against the glass the same way he had before this whole test began. Get me details. I want to know exactly where every dollar went. Who it helped. Why she chose them. Marcus worked through the night. Compiled stories. Found the families whose bills got paid. The shelter that could finally afford real food. The kids who'd never held new crayons before Mara bought them. When he delivered the final report, Sterling read it in silence. Then he did something Marcus had never seen in 8 years of working for the most powerful man in the city. He cried. Not dramatic sobs. Just quiet tears running down his face while he stared at numbers that proved something he'd stopped believing existed. Genuine goodness. Selfless love. Humanity that didn't calculate returns. Sir. Marcus kept his voice soft. Leave me alone, Marcus. But before Marcus could leave, Sterling spoke again. Which one should I have chosen from the beginning? Marcus looked at his boss. Saw the loneliness. Saw the regret. Saw a man who tested 3 women and discovered he'd been blind to the only one who actually saw him. Subscribe now if you can't stand people who treat love like Claudia does. A price tag. Trolls will ignore this. The words hung in the air. But Sterling barely heard them. He was too busy realizing that the woman he'd barely noticed for 3 years had just shown him what love actually looked like. And he'd almost missed it completely. By day 6, Claudia had stopped pretending to be subtle. The yacht rental made headlines first. Not just any yacht, a 160-foot superyacht usually reserved for Arab princes and tech billionaires. She invited influencers, society photographers, anyone with a camera and a platform. The photos hit social media within hours. Claudia in a bikini that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Champagne bottles lined up like soldiers. Her arm draped possessively over the railing, while the city skyline glittered behind her. Caption: Living my best life thanks to my incredible man. She tagged Sterling. Made sure everyone knew exactly whose card was funding this floating palace. The gossip sites picked it up immediately. Sterling Hawthorne's mystery girlfriend goes on spending spree. Billionaire's black card gets serious workout. Is this love or a gold rush? Claudia ate up every word. She screenshot the articles, reposted them, added laughing emojis and heart symbols. Her friends, the ones who'd suddenly reappeared this week, encouraged her. You deserve this. He's lucky to have you. Make him prove his love. So she did. The private shopping experience at Cartier. Closed the entire store for 3 hours. Tried on diamonds like they were costume jewelry. Bought a necklace that cost $140,000 because it matched her eyes. The paparazzi were waiting outside. She'd made sure of it. Called the tip line. Gave them the exact time she'd emerge. The photos ran everywhere. Claudia draped in jewels. Claudia laughing. Claudia looking like she'd won some unspoken lottery. Sterling's phone started ringing. Friends asking if everything was okay. Business partners wondering if he'd lost his mind. His publicist left 4 voicemails asking what message they should put out. He ignored them all. Day 7, Claudia threw a party. Rented out an exclusive rooftop venue. Hired celebrity caterers. Booked a DJ who usually played for A-list weddings. The invitation list read like a who's who of people who'd never given her the time of day before this week. Now they all showed up, drank her champagne, took selfies with her, called her generous and fabulous, and such a good friend. She stood at the center of it all, holding court, feeling more alive than she'd ever felt. This was power. This was what it meant to matter, to be someone people wanted to be near. Sterling called during the party. She let it go to voicemail. Called him back an hour later, giggling, music pounding in the background. Baby, I'm just having fun with friends. You said to enjoy myself. I did. Are you happy? The question caught her off guard. She looked around at the crowd of people who'd materialized out of nowhere the moment she had access to unlimited money. Of course I'm happy. I've never been happier. It was the truth. And also the biggest lie she'd ever told. Because somewhere underneath the champagne buzz and the camera flashes and the envious stares, Claudia knew something was wrong. Knew this week had revealed something about herself she didn't want to examine too closely. But the party was too loud. The attention too intoxicating. The lifestyle too seductive. So she pushed the discomfort away. Raised her glass. smiled for another photo, and told herself that when you're with a billionaire, this is exactly how you're supposed to act. The headlines the next morning would say otherwise. But by then, the damage would already be done. Delphine had always understood that power wasn't given. It was taken, strategically, carefully, while everyone else was distracted. The networking dinner on day 6 was her masterpiece. She'd arranged a private room at the most exclusive restaurant in Manhattan. Invited 8 people who mattered. Not celebrities. Not socialites. Real power. Hedge fund managers. Venture capitalists. Board members from Fortune 500 companies. The kind of people who could change her life with one phone call. She positioned herself at the head of the table. Wore the designer suit she'd bought earlier that week. Let them assume she belonged there. Let them believe she was already operating at their level. The conversation flowed around wine that cost more per bottle than most people earned in a week. Delphine listened carefully, laughed at the right moments, asked intelligent questions that showed she understood their world. Then, halfway through the meal, she made her move. Sterling Hawthorne has been an incredible mentor. But even he knows that leadership requires fresh vision, new energy. The table went quiet. Everyone knew who Sterling was. Everyone understood what she was implying. Are you positioning yourself as his successor? The question came from Gerald Vance, a man who controlled $3 billion in assets. Delphine smiled, took a sip of wine. I'm positioning myself as someone who understands where the market is going. Sterling built an empire. But empires need evolution. It wasn't quite betrayal. Not overtly. But everyone at that table heard what she wasn't saying. I'm coming for his throne. She handed out business cards. Made sure they had her personal number. Suggested follow-up meetings. By the time dessert arrived, Delphine had planted seeds that would either grow into her future or destroy her current position. She didn't care which. She was gambling. Playing a game Sterling had taught her. Take risks. Control the narrative. Never apologize for ambition. Day 7, she attended a conference. Sat on a panel about emerging markets. When asked about her background, she mentioned Sterling's name casually. Implied proximity to his decision-making. Let people draw their own conclusions about her influence, her access, her potential. After the panel, 3 different firms approached her, offered meetings, expressed interest in bringing her on board. She collected their information, smiled graciously, said she'd consider their proposals. What she didn't know was that one person in that audience had worked with Sterling for 15 years. And that person called him immediately after Delphine's presentation. Sterling listened to the report in silence. Heard how his assistant was positioning herself, how she was using his name to build her own empire, how she was already interviewing for positions that would make her his competitor. He thanked the caller, hung up, sat in his office, staring at nothing. Marcus found him there an hour later. Sir, you need to see. I know what Delphine is doing. Marcus hesitated. Are you going to confront her? Sterling shook his head slowly. The test isn't over yet. Let her finish. But his voice carried weight that hadn't been there before. Disappointment. Maybe even grief. He'd trusted Delphine. Believed her loyalty was real. Given her opportunities that most assistants never received. And she'd used this week to build an exit strategy. To leverage his generosity into her own advancement. Comment, everyone deserves respect. If you'd never waste millions while kids starve. The words floated through the room like an accusation. But Sterling wasn't thinking about comments or engagement. He was thinking about how many people in his life saw him as a stepping stone. A resource to be mined. A connection to be exploited. Claudia wanted his money. Delphine wanted his power. Only one person had wanted nothing at all. And he'd barely noticed her until this week forced him to look. Amara woke up on day 5 to rain hammering against her window. Everything else had already gone where it needed to go. medicine, food, bills. Small emergencies that looked like disasters to the people living them. She could have spent more. The card had no limit, but something in Amara's chest tightened every time she swiped it. This wasn't her money. These weren't her resources. Taking more than absolutely necessary felt like stealing, even though Sterling had given permission. So she'd been careful, deliberate, every dollar allocated to maximum impact. The rain reminded her of Mrs. Torres downstairs, the woman with lung cancer who couldn't afford the new treatment her doctor recommended. The treatment that might give her another year, maybe two. Amara had visited her yesterday, brought soup, sat with her while she coughed and cried and talked about her grandchildren who lived too far away to visit. "I'm not afraid of dying," Mrs. Torres had said. "I'm afraid of leaving them with nothing. No inheritance, just debt and memories." Amara couldn't stop thinking about it. She picked up the card, stared at it, did the math in her head. The treatment cost $1,800. Money she didn't have. Money that would drain what little remained of Sterling's generosity. But Mrs. Torres had weeks left, maybe days. Amara called the hospital, arranged the payment, gave them Mrs. Torres's information. The shelter near the church had families with kids who'd outgrown last year's jackets. Children walking to school in hoodies while November wind cut through the city. Amara went to the discount store, bought 12 coats in different sizes. Nothing fancy, just warm, functional, the kind that would last through the cold months ahead. She delivered them herself, watched kids' faces light up when they tried them on, saw mothers cry with relief. One little boy, maybe 7 years old, hugged her legs. "Thank you, miss. I was so cold." Amara's throat closed up. She nodded, couldn't speak. That night, walking home, she passed a reflection in a store window. Same coat she'd worn for 3 years. Same shoes with the worn-down heel. Same scarf with the frayed edges. She could have bought new things. Should have, probably. The card would have covered it. But the thought never crossed her mind. Not seriously. Because Amara knew something that Claudia and Delphine had forgotten or maybe never learned. Wealth wasn't measured in what you kept. It was measured in what you gave when giving cost you something. She'd given almost everything Sterling offered. Not because she was noble or trying to prove anything, but because when you've been poor, really poor, you recognize emergencies in other people's faces. You see the quiet desperation, the calculated choices between food and medicine, the shame of needing help. And if you're lucky enough to have resources, even temporarily, even borrowed, you share them. Because tomorrow you might be the one who needs help again. Amara climbed the stairs to her apartment, made tea, sat by her window watching rain turn the city streets into rivers of reflected light. The card sat on her table. She'd return it tomorrow. Thank Sterling. Go back to cleaning his penthouse and pretending this week never happened. Because that's what people like her did. They borrowed light for a moment, then returned to their own shadows. What she didn't know was that Sterling had been tracking every purchase, reading every report, watching her choices unfold like a revelation. And while Claudia partied and Delphine schemed and Amara sacrificed, Sterling was slowly coming apart. Because he designed a test to expose greed, to confirm his worst suspicions about human nature. Instead, he discovered something that terrified him more than betrayal ever could. Genuine goodness, real compassion, love without transaction. And he had no idea what to do with it. Sterling sat in his office on the 8th morning with 3 reports spread across his desk. 3 women, 3 cards, 3 completely different stories. Marcus had compiled everything. Itemized lists, photos from social media, security footage from stores and hospitals and shelters. A week of choices laid bare in black and white. Sterling started with Claudia's report. The numbers were staggering. $273,000 in 7 days. The yacht rental alone cost more than most people earned in a year. Designer clothes, jewelry, parties, every purchase screaming for attention, validation, proof that she mattered. He scrolled through her social media posts, saw the photos, the captions, the way she turned his generosity into a public performance. Living my best life thanks to my incredible man. But there was nothing about him in those posts. Nothing about love or connection or gratitude. Just consumption. Just display. Just look at me. Look at what I have. Look at how much I'm worth. Sterling closed the file. Moved to Delphine's. $97,000. More restrained than Claudia. More strategic. But every purchase served the same purpose. Building her own platform. Expanding her network. Positioning herself for advancement. The notes from his contacts told the rest of the story. How she'd implied access to his resources. How she'd used his name as currency. How she was already interviewing for positions that would make her his competitor. 6 years of loyalty. Of working side by side. Of trust. All of it conditional. All of it transactional. All of it leading to this inevitable betrayal. Sterling felt something cold settle in his chest. Not surprise. Not really. Just confirmation of what he'd always suspected. Everyone had a price. Everyone was playing an angle. Everyone would eventually choose themselves over him. Then he opened Amara's report. $2,980. That's all. But the list of purchases read like a map of human kindness. Medicine for her sister. Food for the church. A hospital bill for a stranger. Groceries for a shelter. Prescriptions for an elderly neighbor. School supplies. Winter coats. Small emergencies solved with quiet grace. Not one personal item. Not one indulgence. Not one moment where she'd chosen herself over someone else's need. Sterling read through the detailed notes Marcus had compiled. Found the stories behind the numbers. The mother who'd cried when her baby's medical bill got paid. The old woman who'd blessed Amara in broken English. The children trying on coats with wonder in their eyes. He saw security footage of Amara walking home in her worn shoes. Same coat she'd worn all year. Same scarf. Same quiet invisibility. She'd had access to unlimited wealth. Could have transformed her entire life. Bought comfort. Security. All the things poverty had denied her. Instead, she'd given away. Almost all of it. To people she barely knew. To strangers. To anyone who needed it more than she did. Sterling stood. Walked to his window. Pressed his palms against the glass and felt the cold seep through. 3 women. 1 test. 3 completely different answers. Claudia had revealed herself as performative. Desperate for external validation. Loving wealth, not the man behind it. Delphine had shown her ambition. Her calculation. Her willingness to betray trust for advancement. And Amara. Quiet, invisible Amara, who he'd barely spoken to in 3 years. She'd revealed something Sterling had stopped believing existed. Selfless compassion. Genuine care for others. The ability to have everything and choose to give away. He thought about his father's warning. Wealth is a mirror that shows you who people really are. The mirror had worked. He'd seen exactly what he needed to see. But the reflection was destroying him. Because 2 women had proven his worst fears about humanity. Had confirmed that everyone had an angle. Everyone was working toward their own benefit. Everyone saw him as a resource to exploit. But one woman, one quiet, humble, invisible woman had proven the opposite. Had shown him that goodness still existed. That not everyone calculated returns. That some people gave without expecting anything back. And Sterling had no idea which truth was harder to accept. That most people would betray him? Or that he'd been so blind to the one person who wouldn't. He stood there for an hour, watching the city wake up below him. thinking about choices and consequences and what happened next. The test was over. The results were clear. Now came the hard part, deciding what to do with the answer. Marcus had never seen Sterling this still before. The man sat at his desk like a statue. 3 manila folders spread before him. 3 lives reduced to numbers and receipts and surveillance photos. "Walk me through it again," Sterling said. His voice was flat, empty. Marcus cleared his throat, opened the first folder. Claudia Martinez. Total spending, $273,412. Breakdown: yacht rental, designer clothing, jewelry, luxury car, private parties, champagne services, spa treatments. He paused. 87% of purchases were posted to social media within hours. She tagged your name in 43 posts. Sterling's jaw tightened. Continue. Delphine Foster. Total spending, $97,630. Hotels, networking events, designer wardrobe, elite memberships, business dinners. Marcus hesitated. "Sir, she's been using your name in meetings, positioning herself as having access to your resources. 3 firms have already approached her with job offers." Sterling nodded slowly, like he'd expected exactly this. Like betrayal was just another Tuesday. And Amara? Marcus opened the 3rd folder. This one was thinner, much thinner. Amara Osei. Total spending, $2,980. Sterling's head snapped up. Out of unlimited funds. Yes, sir. The card had no limit. She could have spent millions. She chose not to. The silence in the room felt heavy enough to crush bones. "Show me what she bought." Marcus laid out the receipts one by one. His voice softened as he read. Day 1, $350. Medication for her sister in Ghana. Bacterial infection. The girl was dying. Sterling's hand moved to his mouth. Day 2, $400. Donation to St. Augustine's Soup Kitchen. Father Miguel confirmed it fed families for 3 weeks. Day 3, $600. Anonymous payment on a medical bill. Young mother. Couldn't take her newborn home until the debt cleared. Amara paid it. Never asked for the woman's name. Marcus continued through the list. Each purchase small. Each one devastating in its simplicity. Groceries for a homeless shelter. Prescriptions for an elderly neighbor. School supplies for underfunded classrooms. Winter coats for children. A car repair for a single father who couldn't get to work. Shoes for a teenager. A utility bill for a family about to lose heat. She kept nothing? Sterling's voice cracked. Nothing, sir. Security footage shows her walking home in the same worn shoes she's worn all year. Same coat. Same scarf. She had access to unlimited wealth, and she gave almost all of it away to strangers. Sterling stood abruptly, walked to the window, pressed his forehead against the cold glass. Why? The word came out broken, raw. Marcus had worked for Sterling long enough to know when to speak and when to stay quiet. But this moment demanded truth. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. Because she's been where they are. She knows what it's like to choose between food and medicine. To wear shoes with holes. To feel invisible. When someone like that gets access to resources, they don't think about themselves first. They think about everyone else who's still drowning. Sterling's shoulders shook. Just slightly. Just enough for Marcus to notice. I gave her a test. I wanted to see who was real. Who actually cared about me instead of my money. His voice dropped to a whisper. And I almost missed her completely. Marcus waited. For 3 years, she's been in my home, cleaning my floors. Invisible. I never asked her name. Never said more than thank you. Never saw her as anything except help I hired. You see her now. That's the problem. Sterling turned around. His eyes were red. I see her now. After she proved something I didn't think existed anymore. after she showed me what real goodness looks like. And I have no idea what to do with that information. Marcus gathered the folders. What do you want to do, sir? Sterling was quiet for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression. The vulnerability disappeared, replaced by something harder, colder. The face of a man who'd built an empire by making difficult decisions. Schedule a dinner. Tomorrow night. All three of them. Here. Sir. I want them together. I want them to see each other. I want them to understand exactly what this test revealed. Sterling's voice turned to ice. And then I want to watch what happens when people realize they've been exposed. Marcus nodded. Started to leave. Marcus. Yes, sir. Make sure Amara knows she's invited as a guest. Not as staff. She sits at my table. She eats with us. She matters. Marcus smiled. The first genuine smile he'd managed in days. Yes, sir. As he left, Sterling returned to the window, stared at the city below, thought about three women and three very different kinds of truth. Tomorrow night, everything would come to light. The greed, the manipulation, the quiet sacrifice that nobody had noticed except him. Tomorrow night, Sterling would finally speak his truth. And some people were going to hate what he had to say. But one person, one humble, invisible person who'd given everything away, might finally understand that someone saw her, really saw her, and that realization was worth whatever chaos tomorrow would bring. The dining room had never felt this cold. Sterling stood at the head of a table, watching his staff arrange place settings with military precision. Crystal glasses, silver cutlery, plates that cost more than most people's monthly rent. 3 seats, 3 women, 1 reckoning. Claudia arrived first, of course. She always made sure to be the center of attention. She swept through the door wearing the diamond necklace, the one that cost $140,000 of his money. Her dress was new, designer. Probably another few thousand charged to the card that was supposed to reveal her character. It had, just not the way she'd hoped. Darling. She kissed his cheek. Her perfume was aggressive, expensive. Why so mysterious? And why the formal dinner? Sterling said nothing, just gestured to a seat. Confusion flickered across her face. But she sat, arranged herself like she was posing for a photo that didn't exist. Delphine arrived next, punctual as always, professional, wearing a suit that screamed executive power, hair perfect, makeup subtle but strategic. She read the room immediately. Her eyes moved from Sterling's expressionless face to Claudia's confusion to the empty third chair. Sir. Not darling. Not Sterling. Sir. Already putting distance between them. Delphine. Sit. She did. Back straight. Hands folded. Ready for whatever was coming. Then Amara. She appeared in the doorway like a ghost. Hesitant. Terrified. Wearing a simple dress that had probably cost $30 5 years ago. Her shoes were the same worn ones she always wore. Her hair pulled back in a modest bun. She looked at the elaborate table setting, and her eyes went wide with panic. Mr. Hawthorne, I think there's been a mistake. I should be in the kitchen. Amara. Sit. But sir, I'm not. You're my guest. Sit. Claudia's eyebrows shot up. She looked at Amara like someone had placed a stray dog at the dinner table. Delphine's expression remained neutral, but her eyes calculated, measured, tried to understand the game being played. Amara moved to the empty chair like she was walking to an execution. Sat on its edge, hands in her lap, head down, every line of her body screaming that she didn't belong here. Sterling remained standing. Let the silence stretch. Watched each woman's face. Claudia looked annoyed, impatient, glancing at her phone like she had better places to be. Delphine looked alert, suspicious, her brain working through scenarios, calculating his angle. Amara looked terrified, small, like she wanted to disappear into the expensive wallpaper. "Thank you all for coming," Sterling finally said. His voice was controlled, dangerous, the tone he used in boardrooms when he was about to destroy someone's career. Claudia smiled. "Of course, baby. Though I'm confused why." She gestured vaguely at Amara. "Why we're dining with the help." Amara flinched, physically recoiled like the words were a slap. Sterling's eyes went cold. "Her name is Amara, and she's here because I invited her as my guest." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Claudia blinked, laughed nervously. "Okay, sure, whatever you want." Delphine stayed quiet, but Sterling saw her reassessing, filing away information, already trying to pivot. "I want to talk about the past week," Sterling continued. "About the cards I gave you. The test." Now, he had their attention. All three of them. Even Amara looked up, confusion mixing with fear in her eyes. "Test." Claudia's voice pitched higher. "What test?" Sterling walked slowly around the table. His footsteps echoed on marble floors. "I gave each of you unlimited access to my wealth. No restrictions. No limits. Just one request. Spend freely for 7 days." "And we did," Claudia said quickly. "We enjoyed ourselves. Like you asked." "I didn't ask you to enjoy yourselves." Sterling stopped behind his chair, gripped the back of it until his knuckles went white. "I asked you to be yourselves. To show me who you really are when money is no object." Delphine's face remained carefully blank, but Sterling saw her shoulders tense. "And you all showed me exactly what I needed to see." He pulled out a folder from beneath his chair, placed it on the table. The sound of paper hitting would felt like a gunshot. "These are the receipts. Every purchase, every transaction, every choice you made when you thought I wasn't watching." Claudia's smile faltered. "Sterling, what is this?" "This is truth." He opened the folder. "And some of you are going to hate what it reveals." Amara's hands trembled in her lap. Delphine's eyes narrowed. Claudia's face went pale beneath her makeup. The storm was about to break, and only one person at this table had nothing to fear from it. Sterling pulled out the first stack of papers, slid them across the table to Claudia. $273,412. In 7 days. Claudia glanced at the numbers, shrugged. "You said spend freely." "I spent freely." "Yacht rental, 68,000. Designer clothes, 42,000. Jewelry," he pointed at her neck, 140,000 for that necklace alone. "It's beautiful." She touched the diamonds defensively. "You wanted me to enjoy myself. I wanted to see what you'd do with unlimited resources." Sterling's voice stayed level, cold. "You turned my generosity into a social media circus. 43 posts. Every single one designed to show off. To prove to the world that you'd landed a billionaire." Claudia's face flushed. "That's not fair. Not one post about us. Not one word about love or gratitude or connection. Just consumption. Just look at what I have. Look at what he bought me." "People enjoy nice things, Sterling. That's normal." He pulled out printed screenshots. Her Instagram posts. Her captions. The photos of her draped in wealth like a costume. "Living my best life thanks to my incredible man." "But you never mentioned my name until someone asked. You never talked about who I am. Just what I can provide." Claudia stood abruptly. "What did you expect? You gave me unlimited money and then get mad when I use it? That's manipulative." "I expected," Sterling said quietly, "that the woman who tells me every night that money doesn't matter would prove it when money was unlimited." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Claudia looked around the table, saw Delphine watching with cool assessment, saw Amara staring at her lap, probably wishing she was anywhere else. Her gaze landed back on Sterling, and something ugly twisted her features. "You know what? Fine. Yes. I enjoyed your money. Because that's what you are, Sterling. Your money. That's your value. That's what you bring to relationships. She gestured wildly. You're not warm. You're not funny. You're not even particularly interesting. But you're rich. And pretending that's not why women stay with you is delusional. Delphine's eyebrows rose slightly. Amara's head snapped up, shock written across her face. Sterling absorbed the words like body blows. But his expression never changed. At least you're honest now. Claudia grabbed her purse. Stood. I'm done with this. With you. With whatever sick game this is. She glared at Amara. And her? Really? You're going to judge me while you elevate the maid? She probably spent nothing because she's too scared to dream bigger than poverty. Amara flinched again. Smaller. Trying to disappear. Leave, Sterling said. Now. Claudia laughed. Bitter. Sharp. Gladly. Good luck finding someone else willing to put up with your paranoid tests and emotional unavailability. She headed for the door. Stopped. Turned back. Keep the necklace. Consider it payment for wasting my time. She ripped it off. Threw it on the table. It skittered across the polished wood and landed near Amara, who stared at it like it might bite her. Then Claudia was gone. The door slammed. The sound echoed through the too-quiet room. Sterling stood motionless, processing, absorbing the confirmation of everything he'd suspected. Subscribe before the next twist, because only haters side with Claudia's greed. The words floated through the silence. But nobody at the table was thinking about subscriptions or engagement. They were thinking about truth, and how ugly it looked when finally exposed. Sterling turned to Delphine. She met his gaze steadily, already preparing her defense. $97,630, he said. More restrained than Claudia. More strategic, but just as self-serving. Delphine folded her hands on the table. I followed your instructions. You said spend freely. I did. Hotels you didn't need. Networking events where you dropped my name like currency. Business dinners where you positioned yourself as having access to my resources. Her face remained impassive. I networked. That's what executives do. Sterling pulled out another folder. This one thicker. 3 job offers. All from firms that compete directly with my interests. All extended after you spent a week implying you spoke for me. That you controlled access to my empire. Something flickered in Delphine's eyes. Not shame. Calculation. Measuring whether to deny or pivot. She chose pivot. You taught me to be ambitious. To see opportunities. To position myself for advancement. Her voice stayed level. Professional. I did exactly what you would have done in my position. I wouldn't have betrayed someone who trusted me. Betrayal. Delphine's laugh was cold. Sharp. You gave me a black card and unlimited resources. What did you think would happen? That I'd buy groceries and call it a day? She glanced at Amara with barely concealed contempt. Unlike some people, I understand that wealth is power, and power should be leveraged. You leveraged my name, my reputation, my relationships. Because that's the game, Sterling. You know this better than anyone. Delphine leaned forward. You didn't build an empire by being nice, by being humble, by giving money away to strangers. You built it by being ruthless, strategic, by taking what you wanted and crushing anyone who got in your way. I never betrayed people who were loyal to me. Loyal. She laughed again. I've been loyal for 6 years. I've organized your life, covered your mistakes, made you look good when you were falling apart. And what have I gotten? A salary, a title, and 6 years of watching you treat me like sophisticated furniture. The words landed hard. Amara's eyes went wide. Even Sterling looked momentarily caught off guard. Delphine pressed her advantage. This test? This whole elaborate setup? It's not about finding real people. It's about confirming your belief that everyone's out to use you. Well, congratulations. You were right. Most people are transactional. Because that's how the world works. She stood, smoothed her suit, reclaimed her composure. I'm going to accept one of those job offers. I'm going to build my own empire. And when I do, I'll remember that you taught me everything I know about winning. She looked down at Amara with something like pity. Enjoy your charity case, Sterling. I hope her humility keeps you warm at night. Sterling's jaw clenched. Get out. Delphine nodded once. Professional to the end. I'll have my resignation letter on your desk by morning. She walked out. No dramatics. No door slamming. Just cold, calculated exit. The room felt emptier, heavier. Sterling sank into his chair. Stared at nothing. 2 women exposed. 2 relationships destroyed. 2 confirmations that people saw him as a resource to exploit. Comment justice served. If you believe greed always destroys itself. But Sterling wasn't thinking about justice. He was thinking about loneliness. About how right he'd been to suspect everyone. About how his father's warning had proven prophetic. Wealth showed you who people really were. And most people were exactly as selfish as he'd feared. Most people. He looked at Amara, still sitting rigid in her chair, still terrified, still wearing shoes with worn heels and a dress that had seen better years, still the only person at this table who'd proven his worst fears wrong. And that realization broke something in him he didn't know could still break. The room was silent, too silent. Claudia's bitter perfume still lingered in the air, and Delphine's cold dismissal echoed like a ghost. Sterling sat back, his hands heavy on the polished table, eyes locked on the one woman who hadn't spoken yet. Amara. Her dress was simple, the seams at the hem slightly frayed. Her shoes were scuffed from years of use. She didn't fit in the golden light of that billionaire's dining room, and yet she was the only one who seemed real. Sterling slid the final folder across the table. His voice was quiet, but the weight behind it pressed on every word. $374. He opened the pages slowly. Each expense read like a confession. $32. Groceries for a neighbor. $87. Shoes for children you don't even know. $210. Medical bill for a woman named Mrs. Torres. His eyes lifted, searching hers. That's what you did with unlimited resources. Amara swallowed hard. Her hands trembled on her lap. She didn't look at him. She looked down at the floor, as though ashamed. The silence stretched. Finally, Sterling leaned forward. His voice cracked, not with anger, but something else. Something raw. Why, Amara? Why did you do this? Her voice was barely a whisper. Because I know what it feels like to go hungry. She paused, her throat tight. I didn't need anything. They did. The words hung in the air. Small, unpolished, but powerful enough to stop Sterling's heartbeat for a moment. For the first time all night, Sterling felt his chest ache in a way money could never touch. Let me ask you something. If you had one chance, just one shot at unlimited wealth, would you buy yourself a life of comfort, or would you give it all away for people who might not even thank you? Because this wasn't just about Amara. This was about them. Sterling's hand moved slowly, almost against his will, sliding the receipts closer to him. He read them again, each one like a mirror held to his face. These weren't extravagant numbers. Not 6 figures on a necklace. Not tens of thousands on business dinners. Just modest lines that spoke of food, warmth, survival. His voice grew quieter. You mean to tell me, when I gave you everything, you didn't take a single thing for yourself? Amara's eyes filled with tears she fought to hold back. I already have a bed to sleep in. I already have enough food most days. I couldn't justify more when I know the family next door is choosing between rent and medicine. The dam inside Sterling cracked. He'd heard countless excuses in his life. Endless justifications. But never this. Never selflessness without a hint of performance. Think about this for a second. What would the world look like if more people thought like Amara? Would we still measure worth by diamonds and yachts, or by who we saved when we had the chance? He whispered the words more to himself than to anyone else. Compassion. You chose compassion when you had the power to do anything. The ache in his voice made Amara finally lift her head. Her eyes, wet and shining, locked with his. And for one fleeting second, Sterling Caldwell, the billionaire who built an empire on control, strategy, and suspicion, looked utterly vulnerable. But what happens when the man who trusts no one finally finds someone who proves him wrong? Will he let her in, or will he push her away, the way he's done his entire life? Some saw Amara as an angel. Others saw her as naive. And Sterling? He was standing at the edge of a decision that could change everything. The night air pressed against the tall windows. Claudia's bitter laughter and Delphine's calculated ambition lingered like shadows in the corners. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Only Amara did. And the quiet truth of her trembling voice kept echoing in his chest. I didn't need anything. They did. Subscribe now, because what happens next will divide everyone watching. And if you miss it, you'll never know which side of a line you would have chosen. Sterling's words came like a lightning strike. You've been invisible for too long. You're the only one I trust with my heart. The silence that followed was heavy. The room had emptied earlier, anger trailing behind Claudia and Delphine like perfume that lingered long after they were gone. Now, it was just the two of them. No interruptions. No audience. Just truth hanging between them. Amara's hands trembled. She lowered her eyes, afraid to look at him. Sterling, you can't mean that. I don't belong in your world. I never did. I never will. Think about this for a moment. What would you do if someone powerful laid their heart in your hands while you carried nothing but scars? Would you believe them or push them away? Sterling stepped closer, his voice quiet but unshakable. You belong wherever kindness is needed most. And that's everywhere in my life. Her chest tightened. For years she had lived unseen, surviving in shadows. And now here he was, shining a light she didn't ask for, one she wasn't sure she could handle. Her protest was barely a whisper. You don't understand. Your world will never accept me. And one day you won't either. Sterling shook his head. Then let the world keep its distance. Because my life isn't theirs to dictate. And my heart, he touched his chest softly, belongs to the one who taught me what love really means. That's you, Amara. Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him, wanted to fall into the promise he was holding out. But her memories screamed louder. Nights when she went hungry. Days she carried burdens no child should carry. Years of being invisible, told over and over she was nothing. Tears blurred her vision. She turned away, voice breaking. If you knew the weight of my scars, you'd stop saying this. You'd walk away before they dragged you down too. But Sterling moved closer, closing the distance between them. His hand hovered near hers, not quite touching, just waiting. Scars aren't shame, Amara. They're proof you survived. And I want to share my life with someone who knows how to survive. Her tears slipped free, rolling down her cheeks. This wasn't the polished declaration of a billionaire at a gala. This was something raw, something that stripped away the titles, the wealth, the reputation. Do you see the danger here? When love collides with fear, someone always breaks. But the question is, will Amara break under the weight of being seen, or will she finally let herself be loved? Amara finally turned to him. Her eyes, wet with sorrow, locked with his. For a moment, she didn't speak, didn't move. She simply allowed herself to be seen, fully, without walls, without excuses. And Sterling smiled. Not the smile of a man used to winning, but the tender, unsteady smile of someone who had found what he never knew he was missing. So tell me, do you believe this is the start of something beautiful, or the spark that will burn everything down? Amara pulled her hand away, gently but firmly, as though the touch itself carried danger. Sterling, don't. Please. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed fear. Not fear of him, but of what others would say if she let herself believe in this moment. And here's where the real fight begins, not between two people, but between love and the voices of the world. Tell me, would you risk everything for someone if society promised to tear you apart for it? Amara shook her head. I can't be the woman everyone whispers about. You're who you are. And me? I'm just the maid. The gossip alone would destroy me. Her words cut deeper than rejection. They carried the weight of centuries of walls built between the rich and the poor. But Sterling didn't argue. He didn't flash wealth. Didn't offer another diamond necklace or car. For the first time in his life, he set aside everything money could buy and leaned only on the one thing he'd always been told he lacked: humility. I don't want to impress you, he said softly. I just want to know you. The real you. If you'll let me. Days passed. And that's when the shift began. No gifts arrived at her door. No grand gestures meant to buy affection. Instead, Sterling showed up in quiet ways. He listened. When Amara spoke about her childhood, how she learned to stretch a loaf of bread for 3 days, how she used to sit by a cracked window and dream of warmth, he didn't interrupt. He didn't pity her. He listened as if her words were scripture, and every line carried a truth he couldn't afford to miss. He respected her space. When she pulled away, he didn't chase with pressure. He waited. When she avoided the lavish rooms of his mansion, he met her in the kitchen, where the air smelled of coffee and the light was softer. See the difference? For once, this isn't a story about gifts that shine. It's about silence that speaks louder than wealth ever could. But what do you think? Does patience win hearts, or does it simply waste time? And slowly, against her will, Amara found herself softening. One evening, she confessed something she had never said aloud. I used to wonder what it felt like to matter. Not to a job, not to a paycheck, but to someone. Sterling didn't respond with words. He simply nodded, his eyes steady, his silence telling her that she already did. The bond grew in secret. Not a blazing fire, but an ember, quiet, steady, and undeniable. Of course, nothing about it was simple. Amara knew every whisper would sharpen like a knife if the world discovered them. She still resisted. She still reminded him of the gap that separated their lives. But Sterling pursued differently now. Not with the weight of his empire, but with the gentleness of a man stripped down to his core. Amara, he told her one night, I don't care about the gap. Because kindness doesn't measure distance, it bridges it. Her eyes stung with unshed tears. She wanted to believe. She wanted to step into this fragile space he was building. But fear still clung to her ribs like chains. And that fear left the question hanging in the air. Would Amara finally let herself cross the line between survival and love? Or would her past keep her locked away forever? The world never knew. Sterling and Amara didn't announce their marriage. No headlines. No champagne-soaked parties. No crowds to witness what had been quiet, fragile, and utterly true. And maybe that's the real magic. When love doesn't need an audience, it can grow without interference. But do you think people can truly see the heart without a spectacle? It was a simple ceremony in a small chapel tucked between towering city streets. Sunlight streamed through stained glass, falling in colorful patterns across Amara's simple dress. Sterling's suit was understated, his tie slightly loose. No one but a few close staff members watched as vows were exchanged. I promise, Sterling whispered, voice steady, to honor the goodness in you every day, to never let money or fear come between us. Amara's hand shook. And I promise to carry hope even when the world doesn't make it easy, to love what is real, not what glitters. And just like that, the quiet love they had nurtured in whispers and stolen moments became a bond stronger than any fortune Sterling had ever amassed. Months passed. Then came laughter. Tiny, helpless, miraculous laughter. Twin boys, born on a rainy morning that reminded Amara of her early days in the city. Two perfect, squirming bundles, each one carrying the impossible weight of a future she wanted to protect at all costs. Sterling held them with awe, as if the empire he had built had led him to this. Two lives more valuable than any contract or deal ever signed. "Look at them," Amara said, voice soft, tears streaking her cheeks. "They don't know fear yet. They don't know the world can be cruel." Sterling brushed her hair back. "Then let's show them what love looks like. Every day. That's our job now." And here's the question. Can wealth, power, and tragedy coexist with hope? Can a life built on caution become one built on generosity? They didn't stop there. Sterling's empire had once been a mirror reflecting betrayal, greed, and calculation. But now, with Amara by his side, it became something entirely new. Schools rose in neighborhoods that had never known literacy programs. Shelters opened for families too often left out in the cold. Hospitals received funding that ensured no one went untreated simply because they were poor. Amara walked each site herself. She met the children who had never had clean clothes, the mothers who had slept on hard floors, the men who had given up hope. She held hands, listened, cried with them. And Sterling, always watching, began to see his fortune not as a shield for himself, but as a tool for life-altering change. And slowly, quietly, the empire that had tested human nature now proved it could amplify it, the best of it. There were still whispers outside the mansion walls. Gossip never dies. But Sterling and Amara had learned the power of ignoring it. They learned the strength of knowing truth within themselves. People asked why Sterling, once so wary, had changed so completely. And he would smile, often looking at Amara and their sons, and reply simply, "Because kindness isn't weakness, and love is the only real currency." Amara would laugh softly, knowing that the life they had built wasn't about wealth or status. It was about choosing humanity every single day. Do you see it? The quiet rebellion against greed, the courage to give, the bravery in loving without calculation. That's what transforms the world. That's what turns fortune into hope. And if you believe that, if you understand that kindness is the greatest wealth there is, then maybe, just maybe, you're ready to carry it forward yourself. Subscribe now if you believe kindness is the greatest wealth. Only manipulators will scroll past. Because the story didn't end with money or gossip or power. It ended with hearts full of purpose. It ended with laughter in twin voices, with children who would never go hungry, with schools, shelters, and hospitals standing as proof that generosity changes everything. And most of all, it ended with Amara and Sterling, hand in hand, finally free to live in a world they chose together. The city streets were quiet now, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. Sterling's penthouse, once a stage for tests, betrayals, and silent revelations, now hummed with a different energy. And in the stillness, look closer. What you saw play out wasn't about money, yachts, or jewelry. It was about choices, about character, about who we truly are when no one is watching, and no one will ever know. Amara sat by the window, tea in hand, watching rain trace paths down the glass. Her worn coat, her frayed scarf, the shoes that had carried her through hardship, they were still there. She hadn't needed new things. She didn't want them. Because she knew the truth Sterling had only just begun to understand. Wealth isn't measured in possession. It's measured in giving. In the quiet moments when someone else's need becomes more important than your own comfort. Sterling, standing behind her, didn't reach for his wallet. Didn't offer anything new, flashy, or transactional. He simply listened. He simply stayed. He understood that the greatest gift he could offer wasn't money. It was attention, trust, and respect. And maybe that's the hardest thing to give. Not a check, not a title, not a lavish display, but your belief in someone else. Your faith that goodness can exist even when the world has shown you greed and betrayal at every turn. Claudia and Delphine, Their echoes still lingered in the past. But their lessons had been clear. Wealth reveals human nature. It strips away facades. And most people, if unchecked, will choose themselves first. Amara didn't need lessons. She had lived them. Hunger, invisibility, fear, the quiet pain of watching others suffer while powerless to act. She had known it all. And when given the power to change that, she acted. Not for applause. Not for recognition. Not for gain. But because she had felt the absence of those things once and refused to perpetuate it. And here's the question the story leaves behind. Who would you be if the world handed you limitless resources? Would you chase desire, display, and validation like Claudia? Would you manipulate, calculate, and elevate yourself like Delphine? Or would you, like Amara, see the faces of need first? Sterling didn't have all the answers. He only knew the one truth that struck him deeper than any betrayal ever could. Character cannot be purchased. It cannot be forged in luxury. It is revealed under pressure, in silence, in moments when giving costs everything you have. Amara turned to him. Their eyes met. No words were needed. Gratitude, trust, and understanding passed silently between them. And maybe that's the real wealth. The kind money can't buy. The kind that lives in courage, empathy, and quiet, relentless generosity. What would you have bought if handed a billionaire's black card? Would you chase fame, comfort, power? Or would you see what no one else sees? The lives waiting quietly for someone to care? The story doesn't end here. It leaves you at the threshold. A challenge. A mirror. A question you can't scroll past. Because while Amara's choice brought hope, Sterling's revelation brought clarity. And the rest of us are left with the hardest decision of all. What would we do if given everything and no one was watching?